Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to Nashville. How many of you are not from Nashville? You're not from this part of the country. Okay, good. I could tell because I heard many strange-sounding accents as I was wandering around. So because of that, we will begin with a mandatory language orientation. This is called Southern 101, and so I'd like some participation here from the audience. How would you pronounce that word? Cheer. All right, well, in Nashville, that is a cheer. Now, when we get a little bit more advanced in school, around 7th or 8th grade, they begin introducing grammar to us. And so I'd like to give you an advanced grammar lesson. Second person pronoun, singular. Now, in most parts of the country, I think you all realize that's you. But down here, the singular second person pronoun is y'all. Now, if that's the singular, what is the plural? No, not y'all's, that's possessive. When I first came to Nashville, a person came up to me and said, "Y'all's cheer comfortable?" And I kept looking around, what do you mean y'all's? I was very confused. It's really simple to make the plural down here. You just put an all in front of it. So all y'all. So all y'all comfortable? All right, that's great. Well, we're very, very excited to have you here in Nashville and tell you just a little bit about this. First of all, I want to thank you, not just because of what the mayor has predicted you will do, and that's to leave lots of your Yankee money here in Nashville. Which would be okay. It converts 2 to 1 to Confederate, and that'll work out just fine. But we're really pleased to have you here. When you look at the mission statement of USASBE, it's awesome. Advance knowledge and foster business development. Advance and foster business development through educating in entrepreneurship and research. And it is scary for me to be up here in front of you. You are the ones that are paving the way. You are teaching this to young people every day. You're doing the research to help make some things happen. And I admire that tremendously. We share a great deal in common. All of us depend for our livelihood on logical 18 to 22-year-old kids. Now, that's an interesting experience to share, isn't it? But the difference that you make with them is because of this. Words, of course, have great power. And we have to choose words carefully. I love the way Zig Ziglar put it. He said, if a man goes up to a woman and he says, "Honey, you are so beautiful. Your face makes time stand still." Well, he might get an interesting, positive reaction. But if you went to the same woman and said, "Honey, your face would stop a clock," you're going to get a very different reaction. But when we use words like advance and foster, and you look at what they mean, advance means to move forward, and foster is promote the growth. And what you do in your organization does both of these critical things. And it's exciting to be just an opportunity for me to have a few minutes here with you. I want to thank you for being willing to take the lead in challenging times. We all know what challenging means. And there have been lean times and there have been leaner times, haven't there? And we're in the leaner times. But the fact that you're willing to stay the course and realize that resources do ebb and flow, mostly ebb, occasionally flow. But we work hard to help engender the spark in a young person that could then go on to something even greater. It's interesting when I think about my own alma mater. There's a brand new computing center that opened about 10 years ago. It was put in by a little bit of cash donated by a fellow named Gates and a fellow named Ballmer. And interestingly enough, Bill Gates had no real interest in business. He had interest in computing, and he had interest in playing poker. But somebody shared a thought with him that you could do just about anything if you're willing to work it hard, take some risks, and do something that can make a difference in the world. Somebody in academic got that idea in his head. And now you see the amount of money that's coming back from the Gates Foundation into higher education, and the loop becomes completed. And it's an awesome thing that you do. And I want to thank you for believing in young people. How many of you are in the classroom? Okay, isn't it amazing? Are you ready for your second semester? Have you looked at the student profiles? It's pretty exciting. But actually, I showed this to somebody in the group and they said, "Oh, no, that looks like my junior faculty. You know, this is a very different experience." Let me tell you just a little bit about the Southwestern Company. We are not the textbook publisher based in Cincinnati. They're the South-Western. We're the Southwestern without the hyphen. There was a big battle over 100 years ago, and we were older, so we got it. We are the ones that work with college students, and we work with family educational studies systems. I'll tell you just a bit about it. We were founded here in Nashville in 1855. We're the third oldest company in Nashville. Nobody can remember what the other two are, but we know that we're the third oldest. We have been working with college students since 1868. That was me my first summer on the bottom left there. I thought I looked pretty good. But we continue to work with college students to this very day. And it is a fascinating experience to be with them. We sell products in 3 countries, in the U.S. forever and ever, in Canada for a bit over 20 years, and in the U.K. for the last 15 years. But what's even more significant are the number of college students who come here from other countries to spend their summer learning how to run a business. And you can see from the map the various countries that are represented. In fact, as you wait, and Bill warned you about the elevator lines, you will wait, but as you go up and down the lifts, you will hear many different accents because we have students from all over the world here for the common purpose of learning about building a business and learning principles of success that could make a difference to them as they go forth in their lives. More than 150,000 young people have participated in the Southwestern program since we got started. And obviously we love working with the kids, as we call them sometimes. When I was 18, I knew everything. How many of you were in that category? All right, I knew everything, and I knew that it had to be fairly easy. After all, the guy recruiting me was not very sharp. And then I quickly learned that when you're going door to door and face to face, you deal with rejection and refusal about 99% of the time. And in the course of that, you learn a great deal about people. You learn most of all about an important person, and that's ourselves. And it's a fascinating experience that every summer, millions of households hear a knock on the door, and a good number of them don't answer. Many people say, oh, I don't want to answer the door. I don't know who's out there. So imagine what that's like. If you're on the other side of the door, you're a college student. Perhaps you're from Slovakia. You knock on the door, you're excited. You hear rustling in the house, and no one comes to the door. The student says, oh, I feel bad for those people. Somebody must have harassed or intimidated them sometime. And they just say, I'm not going to be able to help out here, and they go to the next house. They learn about human nature even when there's nobody at the door to talk with them. Fascinating. The students do really well if they work hard. They've made over $100 million during the last 5 years to go back into their tuition expenses. And I enjoyed meeting folks here from Fond du Lac earlier. One of the young women from Fond du Lac, who's worked with us now for 4 summers, her mother called her before last summer and said, I'm the only one working. Your dad just got laid off. Your sister's losing her job. I just need to know you can bring back $15,000 this year. Can you do it? And she said, I'll do it again, Mom. Don't worry. And to me, it's the most inspiring thing in the world when you see young people taking the responsibility for their own education instead of living on the parental dole indefinitely. Now, some of you are like me. You have children that have been through college and they're older. All right? Many of us are what we're called the baby boomer generation. Our kids are sometimes known as the boomerangs. They leave home and come back. You know, why did they come back? And you know what an exciting time it is when they develop that independence. Our alumni are everywhere. The founder of the Boston Consulting Group was one of our graduates. And Bruce Henderson sold books back in the 1930s when employment was, of course, non-existent. You may have heard of Kenneth Starr. He was a little bit well-known during the Bill Clinton era, but he's the dean of the Pepperdine Law School today. The current governor of Texas, our U.S. Congresswoman, Marsha Blackburn, right here in Tennessee. Roger Newton was the discoverer of the anti-cholesterol drug Lipitor, and he sold books with us for 2 years when he was in college. I was able to reach him by telephone when he was with Pfizer after he'd sold his company for $1.3 billion. And it was an amazing thing. He answered his own phone. And I said, Dr. Newton, who's this? Well, my name's Dan Moore. I'm from the Southwestern Company in Nashville. He said, hang on. And the next words I heard him say was, honey, I'll call you back. And then he got on the phone and said, how did you find me? And I told him I'd heard about it, and he told me that in the 10 years it took to get Lipitor developed and approved, he said, I faced rejection constantly, not only from the FDA, but from my own staff. And the things that I learned going door to door gave me a little bit of that grit to help make that through. So it's fascinating. They're just about everything. Now this week, it is fortunate for us that we're in the same place that you are. And you'll see a lot of our young people, and they are amazing people. Incidentally, that's the reason I am not considered an expert speaker. Experts travel more than 50 miles to give a speech, and I live here. So the young people are the real experts, which is a lot of fun. You will see them from all over. You'll see their enthusiasm, their excitement, and I've cautioned about not being too enthusiastic while you're here. But I love their stories. This is Sheldon Brown from Florida State University. Sheldon grew up without a dad, and he grew up almost without a home. He didn't know from month to month where his family would be living. He got into Florida State University on financial aid, and he made up his mind that he was going to become independent and help take care of his mother. He's worked it really hard. It didn't come easily for Sheldon. This past summer, it was a thrill to see Sheldon make $20,000 out selling books door to door and tell his mom, not only do I have school covered, but I got you covered for this year too. And you may see Sheldon as you walk around. He's an awesome young man. So they're excited, they are fun, and you'll see them. Entrepreneurs, by definition, create things. They create businesses. And many of you teach and admire Peter Drucker as much as I do. Drucker said the purpose of business is to create a customer. That's what you do. And in the Southwestern program, we have two major classes of customers. There's the consumer that buys study systems from a student who comes by, but our customer is the college student. They run their own business. They buy product from us at wholesale. We help train and guide, lead, and motivate as best we can. But they do their own collections, their own inventory. They deal with their own bad checks. They deal with their own customers that want to refuse delivery. Every aspect of running the business is up to them. And consequently, that's an important customer. We sell to people with kids. We sell educational books and study guides and software and an online product to help them raise the bar for themselves on what they learn and where they go in life. We call that person Mrs. Jones. And then we have Joe and Jane College. That's our real customer. And in many ways, for those of you in the academic community, that's your customer too. And Joe and Jane College are an admirable group of people. They are most important to what we do. In fact, our mission is all about them. It's to be the best organization in the world in helping young people develop the skills and the character that they're going to need to achieve their goals in life, whatever those goals may be. And we know that both of those are required. The financial opportunity is extremely important to students. What's happening with tuitions where most of you work? Unbelievable. Is anybody here from the California system? Nearly riots, weren't there, when they announced a 32% tuition increase in the UC system. 32%. And so they protested, and Governor Schwarzenegger answered in typical style, "Talk to your legislator." And the students said, what could they do? 32% increase in 1 year. They're faced with this. Interestingly enough, many students borrow, and we know that they do. The average student, not at your high-level, very expensive schools, but all schools, graduates with over $19,000 in student loan debt, and their credit cards, over $4,000. And now we know what's happened with the credit card laws. Miss one payment, and that rate goes up to 30%. The students that graduate in this situation are in a terrible shape. When they're presented with a Southwestern opportunity or any entrepreneurial opportunity, we always tell them, there is no ceiling on your income here, but I warn you, there's no floor either. I had days when I sold books where I made zero, and I had certain days where I made less than zero. I would have no sales, and then I'd come home and open the mail, and there'd be cancellations. You know, that's not fun either. But entrepreneurs face that reality. No ceiling, no floor. They develop a resume which gives them some proof of skills. Interestingly enough, NACE, which many of you are familiar with, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, looks at the characteristics that are needed in the job market today. And I'd like to recognize one of my colleagues for a moment, Dr. Ralph Brigham, if you'd stand. Ralph is last year's president of NACE, selected to represent the employers and colleges all over the country about that. They said in their top 10 list, this is what students need, and you've seen this before: communication skills, motivation and initiative, teamwork and leadership, flexibility and adaptability, work ethic, honesty and integrity. Which of those can be taught from a textbook? You can write textbooks about those things, but some things cannot be adequately taught. They can, however, be learned, and they can be modeled. And those are the things that you help do and the things that students in our program help do. Entrepreneurs need more than just skills to get a job. They need a deep sense of character. Character is often defined as that which gets you up when you don't want to. That's what keeps you going when you don't want to. It's what you do when nobody's looking. It's the integrity that says, I did the right thing at the right time. A willingness to risk. Interestingly enough, when Bill spoke about Kevin Costner a little while ago in Field of Dreams, do you realize that he has started a country band? And I'm not kidding just because this is Nashville. He really has. And he introduced his band at Vanderbilt University. And somebody said, isn't this horrible? I mean, think about it. This could be another Water World. Now, he's speaking to a guy that has 2 Oscars on his hearth for Dances with Wolves. This could be another water world. And he looked at the reporter and said, failure is underrated. Everybody needs to fail. It's okay. It's how you grow. And learning how to risk in the right way and deal with failure. Entrepreneurs need optimism. Optimism. And it's different than just being positive. You know, the positive person, everything is always good. The optimistic person says things may not be good, but I can have some control on the outcome, and it makes a massive difference. This old-fashioned term called grit, where it's not logical to keep going, but you keep going. Well, that makes no sense. Shut up, I'm keeping going. It's the grit to make that work, and a desire fundamentally to make the world a better place. How many of you had a chance to watch the interview at Columbia Business School with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett? You have a chance. It was a fascinating interview because neither one of them spoke about their desire to make money. What they spoke about was using money to better the world. Fascinating, fascinating thing to hear about. In our program at Southwestern, students learned about sales and over time leadership, organizational development, improving performance, and every member of our executive team and staff sold books when they were a college student. And they learn these skills as they grow. It has also helped us develop entrepreneurial success stories within our company. We're privileged at this time, in fact, to have about a dozen different companies. These are some of the major ones within our umbrella. And every one of these companies in diverse fields was founded or led by people that knocked on doors as a college student. And we look forward to building even more businesses entrepreneurially with all the challenges and opportunities that that presents as well. I'm not as smart as most of you. I have to keep things really, really simple. And we can write, and many of you have, written books and monographs and entire conferences on what entrepreneurs should do and have to do. I try to keep it as simple as possible in my own head. At the vertex, the top of the triangle, an entrepreneur with an idea needs to be able to sell that idea. They have to be able to have a system for getting it to market and make that system work over and over and over. In a bottom right-hand corner, they have to have the ability to self-manage because they're not in a corporation with somebody else that's telling them what to do and when to do it. So they have to know how to measure results and measure those against objectives and then manage themselves according to that. Drucker wrote about management by objectives before anybody else ever did, but he had a little phrase at the end of it. He called it managing by objectives and self-control, and learning how to have that self-management, which is so important. And finally, at the other vertex of the triangle is self-motivation. It's that which happens in between encounters with others. It's what happens in our heads. And I think most of us here realize that criticism we receive from the outside world is never as strong as that which we hear in our own minds, in our moments of no confidence, in our moments of darkness. And so learning how to deal with all of those is so important. I think you can take all the stuff that happens in life, and again, I'm a simple-minded man, and you can probably put it into 3 major buckets. The first one is kind of a small one. This is the things we can control. Now, has anybody had any things that happened in 2009 that were completely unpredicted by you, completely uncontrollable by you, that happened to you? Yes, we all have. But did we have a few things in 2009 that we could control? Yeah, at the fundamental level, getting out of bed in the morning remains in the control of each person. May not be able to do anything else properly that day, but I can get out of bed in the morning. And as Kemmons Wilson, the founder of Holiday Inn, once said, there's no real secret to being an entrepreneur. You just get out of bed and work half a day. It doesn't matter if it's the first 12 hours or the second 12 hours. You just work half a day. So there are things we can control. We can be learning to control our effort and our output. We can be learning to control our attitudes. And when I say learning to, I'm almost 55 years old, and people still upset me, and I'm supposed to know how to control my attitude, and it must be their fault. Well, we all know that. We can only be learning to control our attitudes. There's a bigger set of things, a bigger set of buckets. These are the things we can influence. We can't control other people, for example, but is it possible to influence other people? Well, sure. Those of you in the classroom, you must influence, and you do influence. And it makes such a massive difference to what goes on. But even these are rather small. The third, the biggest of all, are those things we just need to accept. We can neither influence nor control. And yet, when we work with people that are very frustrated about their life, sometimes the question to ask is, do you spend more emotional energy on the things you just need to accept than you do on the things you might be able to control or influence. And it's interesting, if we study ourselves, if we focus on what we can control and influence, the things we need to accept become somewhat less important. They're still important. They still buffet us around like a storm. But we get a little bit more of a sense of inner peace and a little bit more of a sense of inner confidence. How many of you remember a book that came out years ago called Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? What a great book. It took me 7 years to read it. It was pretty deep, but I finally got through it. And I was interested to read an interview with Dr. Fulghum many years after the book came out. And he was just a small-town Unitarian minister. But when his book suddenly became the #1 bestseller, well, at that point, he became the most sought-after speaker anywhere. Everybody wanted him, so they flew him around and wined him and dined him, and he got in these huge crowds, but it never suited him. And one day he said, "No more speeches. I'm not traveling anymore. I just want to write books." But the speech requests kept coming. And finally he said, "All right, I will accept 2 kinds of requests, and that's it. First, I will speak to kindergarten children. I owe them a lot. And second, I'll speak to college students." Now, when I read that interview, I thought, this guy's smart. I mean, he can go to a town and talk to kindergarten kids in the morning when they've just gotten out of bed, and then later that evening talk to college students when they've just gotten out of bed, you know, and he can really use his time wisely. And so he would go and he would talk to kindergarten kids in the morning, and they'd always get them all really hepped up. They'd give them, you know, animal crackers and apple juice. These kids would be wired. And he'd say, "Children, I have a question for you. How many of you can sing?" Now, those of you that have 5- and 6-year-old people in your life, if you ask some wired 5- and 6-year-olds if they can sing, what's getting ready to happen? They will sing. They won't answer. They will sing. They'll say, "Let's do the Lion King from top to bottom. It'll be awesome." And they say, "Wow, that's great. You can sing. How many of you can dance?" They're on their feet and they're doing the funky chicken on his head and they're saying, "Yeah, let's dance." He said, "That's amazing. Well, how many of you can draw?" And they jump up and grab the papers and draw a straight line and say, "There. Well, what is it?" "It's my house and my brother. His name is Bill, and I have a ball, and it's a pizza I want to eat for lunch." And he says, "That's awesome." Well, then he'd go get a nap, and that evening go to an auditorium full of college students. And it was very significant. It could be packed, 2,000 students, and the front row would be empty. Who's discovered that in your classrooms? And so he would say, "Students, I have a question for you. How many of you can sing?" Maybe a couple of hands go up, and then you hear the side chatter. "Hey, you sing in the shower badly." "Yeah, well, you sing when you're drunk, man." You know, that's how kids are. But not many hands. And then he'd say, "Well, that's fine. How many of you can dance?" And there'd be a few hands go up, and most people, "Oh, no, I don't dance. I mean, I got the earbuds, and I do this once in a while. No. "Well, how many of you can draw?" A couple of artists raise their hands, and all the rest of, "Oh, no, I'm really kind of text-based. You know, I don't really draw." And Dr. Fulghum would look at the crowd, and he would say, "What's happened to you? What's happened? When you were 5, you could do anything. And now you're 20. You can't even sing. Can't even dance. You can't even draw. What's happened?" We all know what happened. Sometime between little and bigger, we learned a new skill. It's called how to be embarrassed. And that's a learned skill, by the way. Do you realize that no one is born embarrassed? How many of you have been around babies lately? Have you ever seen an embarrassed baby? I never have. They do 3 things abundantly well. They eat, they sleep, they poop, and they are proud of all of them. And if you don't think they're proud, they'll give you more, you know, and they are just not embarrassed. But somewhere between little and bigger, we learn to get embarrassed. And people laugh and they poke fun, and we say, "I better not do that." And we forget how to sing, and we forget how to dance, and we forget how to draw. What I think you do so brilliantly for people, and the reason that I thank you again, is that you help them remember to sing in a different key, to draw with different colors, and to dance like nobody cares. And I'm just proud of all of you. So thanks for what you do for young people. And thanks for coming to Nashville, Tennessee. And hope all y'all have a fabulous time. Thank you.